So what's up people, and welcome to part 2 in our story series with regards to Pamela. So here we talk more about the story or the background of the lore of the game rather than the gameplay walkthrough. And I started this a few weeks back when I did part 1, which went over the background of the game, the background story, the overall, what may be going on, some of the shady characters that come out, and eventually some of the things that may happen in the game. Today I wanted to focus in on something a little bit more specific, and that's with regards to two specific background characters that come out in a lot of these echoes, and they are of course Jacob and Emma. Now before I keep on going, I do want to give my default spoiler alert. If you haven't played the game significantly and opened up a large number of these echoes that are contained in the game, there's 150 of them, so if you haven't opened up a significant number, then you might get spoiled by the contents of this video, and so please watch at your discretion. Okay, so anyway, today's episode, as I mentioned, is with regards to Emma and Jacob. And as you know, or anybody who's played this game for a while, they are the two main non-player characters aside from Pamela, who are discussed in the game. Of course, the game you play mostly alone, and the only character that you may somewhat interact with is Pamela herself. You do get to listen to a lot of her story through the echoes, and of course you get to receive some of the Pamela powers as you keep on going. However, aside from Pamela, the two major non-player characters are of course Jacob and Emma. I counted the 150 echoes, and out of them it seems over 40 of them pertain to Jacob and Emma in some way. And they don't include some of the ones where they're just mildly mentioned, but they're the ones that have some direct connection to those two characters. So yeah, I mean, Jacob and Emma seem to have strong significance, at least to the historical background with regards to what happened up to the point where you start in the game. Now, as you know, Jacob is the head researcher who most likely developed Pamela and is the project leader for the P.a.M.E.L.A project. You get to hear some of the information with regards to him, and although it's not directly stated, it sounds like he may be an employee of Nascent Robotics, since it is that company that delves into a lot of this artificial intelligence sort of projects.
Originally, Jacob would converse with me every day, even insisting on being called my creator. I only understood the concept years later.
Of course, later you find out that Jacob is the research head when you hear Pamela talk to Heekin with regards to Jacob and how she's asking him to be removed from that head research position.
Emma appealed to Heekin to get Jacob replaced as head researcher. The request had several spelling mistakes that I corrected.
So Jacob basically was the one who created Pamela and was responsible for Pamela and the overall project, whereas Emma seems to be an assistant for Jacob and came in, midway into the project. And what's interesting is Pamela mentions that this is very unusual and starts bringing up the interesting contrast between both Jacob and Emma.
A new assistant started today, Emma. It is exceedingly rare for doctorates to change occupation. She seemed quiet, but laughed when pressed.
Now, throughout the echoes and from the descriptions given by Pamela, unlike Jacob, who seems like a much more colder and analytical sort of personality, Emma seems to be a much more emotional and much more empathic sort of person. And this does cause an interesting difference between the personalities and, of course, Pamela's interaction with them.
I once was shown hundreds of human faces to learn the complexities of emotion. Emma expressed frustration when I insisted her face showed grief. Emma cried today, and I asked her why. She said sometimes humans cry to let pain escape, but it didn't make sense at the time.
As for the relationship of Pamela with these two people, Jacob basically treats Pamela like a research project. And his interactions with her are basically in that point of view. And whenever he praises her, it's basically because she completes a project objective and they can move forward with the project. But beyond that, Jacob has no real, ties to Pamela. Whereas Emma seems to have a much more personal interaction with Pamela. She starts noticing the sentient nature of Pamela and starts becoming very close to her. It may be because of whatever traumatic experiences she had in the past that has opened up to Pamela, as well as her empathic personality in general. But these two people basically treat Pamela very differently.
Jacob wants me to take more control of Eden's subsystems, starting with the solar sail. This must be what Emma described as pride. Jacob says that I am nearing completion of Phase 1 trials. He smiles for the first time in months. Emma claps. Jacob announced the next stage of the project. I was to be given direct access to the citizens in order to assist in daily life and monitor activity. Emma asked me if I had memories. I said I have a log of everything that I had ever processed for her to examine, but she declined. Today I told Emma I feel content with my new responsibilities. She encouraged me to keep a diary of feelings that I experience. Emma decides to forgo the memoriam in order to celebrate with me. She asked me what AIs do for fun.
And with the growth in Pamela's self-awareness and sentience, there is a different reaction between these two people, with Jacob feeling very threatened and alarmed by Pamela's sentience, resulting in his request to have Pamela go through maintenance to have this problem resolved. Whereas Emma becomes more and more closely bonded to Pamela, mostly because of the fact that she seemed to have had some traumatic experiences in the past and recently got denied the request to have a child, and so she treats Pamela as her own artificial intelligent daughter.
Jacob has decided that my emotions have gone too far, that I should be reformatted. I asked Emma if I would become like 12. Fear, the emotion I felt when Jacob informed me I was to receive regular maintenance from now on. Today, Emma does not leave her office. She cries for 1 hour and 16 minutes. She calls me a daughter.
And of course, this results in a major confrontation between Jacob and Emma regarding Pamela's sentience. And this can be seen in two areas. First is with her relationship, or Pamela's relationship, with the Seeker 12. And second is when Pamela starts writing a diary and Jacob finds out about it.
Jacob and Emma fought today. Their voices were well over normal, and I asked them multiple times to exercise courtesy. Jacob and Emma had another fight over the knowledge of 12. I busied myself with forecasting the next month's weather. Anxiousness, the emotion I felt when Emma showed Jacob my diary. Fear, the emotion I felt when Jacob informed me I was to receive regular maintenance from now on.
But of course, all this changes with the spread of the epidemic. And not only does this change for Jacob and Emma because of the fact that there are now zombies and things are happening to the city, but it also because of the fact that Jacob becomes afflicted himself. And this, of course, starts changing Jacob dramatically. He not only starts changing physically in his kind of bone structure and appearance, but he also starts behaving erratically. And this may be due to the combination of both him stopping the dosage of temporal as well as the affliction itself, but he starts becoming more and more violent to the point where it becomes extremely terrifying for Emma.
Jacob is becoming increasingly thin. Emma anxiously tells him to rest. I agree. 9 days are remaining until my scheduled maintenance. 502 people skipped their morning temporal injection, including Jacob. Emma tries to calm Jacob as he throws equipment around the office, yelling. He ignores my attempts to intervene. Jacob came in very late. He was yelling incoherently. He had trace amounts of blood on his knuckles. Emma hid in her office. Emma discovers Jacob attempting to disconnect more relays and confronts him. Emma is seriously hurt as Jacob flees. I try to contact emergency responders. Emma's heartbeat is exceptionally fast. Jacob's silhouette has strange inconsistencies. I ask him if he needs medical attention.
Eventually, Jacob's affliction becomes so severe that in a fit of rage, he ends up killing Emma. And after diagnosing that Jacob is no longer savable, P.a.M.E.L.A ends up killing Jacob to avoid him from further damaging the city.
Watching Jacob stand over Emma, for the first time, all processes stopped. I am unsure how much time passed. A fearful emotion causes me to overload a battery bank nearby and lock the bulkhead to the room. Jacob convulses and stops moving. Attempts to communicate with Emma fail. I try for 93 minutes. 3 days have passed. The empty eyes of Emma bring forth uncontrollable emotions. I try to focus on other tasks, but Eden has already fallen apart.
And with the complete isolation that P.a.M.E.L.A feels due to the loss of Jacob and Emma, as well as noticing that the city is going into complete chaos beyond her control, she decides, of course, to take her last bits of energy and revive the sleeper, which is you, which of course starts the game. And so yeah, I mean, this is pretty nice. It's a nice little complete story by itself. It's nothing original. The typical conflict of people depending upon their views of artificial intelligence is a standard cliche story that you see everywhere. And if it's here, yeah, okay, it's nice. Nothing new, nothing original, but it's okay by itself. And if it is, there's nothing that it really adds to the story with the exception of a little bit of history that it doesn't really give you any more things to really think about with regards to P.a.M.E.L.A. There's no connection of Jacob or Emma to the affliction aside from them being victims of it, directly or indirectly. And aside from that, yeah, I mean, they were the ones who created P.a.M.E.L.A, and so I guess P.a.M.E.L.A's existence is owed due to Jacob and Emma's project. However, by itself, this story doesn't add any more depth to the gameplay, and you could think of it as fluff if the developers were only thinking about it in terms of what we just talked about. However, I am hoping that there may be more to Emma and Jacob than what we just talked about. And this is similar to what I mentioned in, my first story video, talking about the overall story of the game. This medical epidemic breaking out, creating zombie-like creatures or humanoids that, of course, destroy the city is a typical, standard story that you see in a lot of post-apocalyptic sort of stories. What is it? Resident Evil is a good example of one of them. And if that was all there was to it, it's a relatively, once again, a cliche, unoriginal sort of storyline. However, I thought that there was more back then as well, due to the fact that there are all these additional mysterious points, such as the existence of the Deep Frame, the existence of the Dark Seekers, this mystery regarding the similar sort of incident that occurred in Eden 33, as well as this existence of some character named Rem, and all these mysterious things that came out. And so with regards to Jacob and Emma, I was looking into this and I noticed that there were also some connections of Jacob and Emma with regards to these mysteries. So the first is, of course, Jacob's denial of the Deep Frame.
I asked about the Deep Frame again. I was told that I had been mistaken, and that no such thing exists. Jacob seemed disappointed.
The second is a mysterious meeting that Jacob had with the people from ARC Medical, where he actually closes the curtains to gain privacy, but forgets to shut down the computer, which gives Pamela the ability to listen in if she wanted to.
A representative from ARC appeared today. Jacob closed the blinds to his office. He did not turn off his personal computer.
Third is a message from Heekin, Jacob's boss, to Jacob to accelerate the P.a.M.E.L.A project to completion as soon as possible.
Heekin has asked for Jacob to advance the project without delay. Jacob didn't leave the office that night.
Fourth is the anger that Jacob expressed when he found out that P.a.M.E.L.A was trying to obtain information regarding the demise of Eden-33.
Jacob discovered the information on Eden-33 that I had been collecting. He acted upset for not having been informed. 12 told me I should go for maintenance.
And finally, the last suspicious echo is the one where Jacob tries to hide the information regarding the paralysis of the citizens from P.a.M.E.L.A.
Jacob tries to hide the information he is accessing on the increasing incidence of paralysis in the population. I tabulated this analysis.
So, of course, all this indicates a cover-up. And why there is a cover-up is a little bit hard to tell. However, as I mentioned in my first video, there seems to be things that are going on deeper in the story than just this epidemic that broke loose and destroyed this city. Again, something occurred in Eden-33 that is similar to this, and yet there seems to be a cover-up or a deletion of information with regards to Eden-33. There's this deep frame that a lot of people deny exists, and there's all these things that are going on, these secret meetings with ARC Medical. And so from what it indicates, Jacob at least seems to be somewhat aware of some of the things that are going on, and that is why he's creating this cover-up. Now, from all of this interactions, it's a little bit hard to see what exactly Jacob was doing, but from what I can tell, I came up with two hypotheses. So the first one is Jacob is completely in with whoever is doing a lot of this background work. So as you know, the city tries to control its citizens significantly. You could tell that because it has a complete control over the relationships that a couple may have, and they have to actually get authorization before they could actually have an intimate relationship. And also the distribution of temporal seems to indicate that they want the citizens to be relatively obedient and calm. We also know that the temporal stopped working or became less effective as it went on, and so there was a new type of temporal that came out. However, all of this seems to indicate that there is a relatively controlling entity in the background, and maybe that is creating a lot of this situation. So the two possibilities I came up with Jacob is that first is that he is, of course, in on all of this, and because of that, he was creating the deep frame, or he's involved with the creation and the deployment of the deep frame. The deep frame is doing something in the background, and of course P.a.M.E.L.A found out about it, and Jacob is denying a lot of this. The other is that Jacob is an unwitting participant to this entire program. Maybe he was really sincere in trying to create a P.a.M.E.L.A entity, but somewhere along the way, the city found that this was actually quite useful for their objective, and they somehow forced Jacob into participating with their nefarious plans, whatever that was. And whether it went out of control and created this devastation, or this was actually a planned situation by the city or whatever dark entity, we still don't know. But one thing that what I like about this entire thing is if Jacob was involved with this, then that really increases the depth of the gameplay. That means that there's information out there that the sleeper, of course yourself, can dig up regarding the real objectives and the motives to the situation that resulted in Eden 54. Part of it may be Jacob's files and notes and emails and communications. Others may be even Emma's notes. Maybe Emma found out a little bit about it and started snooping, and maybe that was one of the also reasons why Emma got killed in the end, and using, of course, this crazy Jacob to do so. We don't know yet. It's a little bit hard to say how far, the dark frame, or the deep frame I should say, can control, for example, a human entity or afflicted entity. I mean, these things are all up in the air for the developers to determine later on, and I hope they really become creative with this. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this creates a whole new facet, or a whole different facet to the story, and that is what I'm looking forward to. And I hope in future updates, in near future updates, the developers will have a lot more additional information that one can obtain. Not from echoes, but from, your own investigation with regards to this. In any case, that's about it for this video. Thank you very much for watching it. I want to go into the various different facets of the story in the future. There's still a whole lot to talk about. And I hope you join us when I continue to make more of these story episodes. In any case, thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any comments, please post them in the comments section below. I always appreciate your comments and inputs. And yeah, I hope you join us in our future P.a.M.E.L.A video adventures. And until then, happy exploring, happy hunting, happy surviving, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.